the previous video, I mentioned that the word salvation in the New Testament comes from the Greek word sozo. Sozo means basically to make something whole or to make complete. And I just want to reinforce here that this isn't just my warped theological understanding of what salvation is. This is Greek vocabulary. So the word gets translated very often in the New Testament as saved, but it also gets translated, as we saw in the last video, healed, or made well, or made whole, or a couple other variations of that idea. So those are the translations of the word sozo. And there are a bunch of tools that I'll reference here. The first tool is the NIDNTT, which is really hard to say, but it's worse if I say the whole full name. It's the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology, which is much harder to say. So I'm just going to say that tool. That tool gives a really full definition of all the key Greek words in the New Testament. And it does this by giving us paragraphs, sometimes pages, on how each word was used in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek, from common Greek language, meaning other writings outside of the Bible. How is this word used there? And throughout the New Testament, how did the New Testament writers use the word? And one of the things this tool says about the word sozo is this: the healing in the stories, the accounts of Jesus' miracles of healing, those healings are always of the whole person. Right? Other Bible dictionaries that give just a more standard, straight-out definition say this. Greek Strong's Dictionary says sozo means to save thoroughly, to cure, to preserve, to rescue, to heal, to make perfectly whole. The Mounce Greek Dictionary says sozo is to convey in safety, to reach a place or state of safety, to heal or to restore to health. Thayer's Greek Dictionary says sozo is to preserve through danger, to bring safe through, to save, i.e., cure one who is sick. And the idea is this: the Greek dictionaries all confirm that the word sozo has an idea not just of saving us from something, but of making us whole again, of fully healing us. And that's what Jesus was doing when he healed the woman we talked about in the last video. He wanted her not just to go away with the bleeding stopped, but he wanted her to go away whole, sozo. All right, so this isn't just my wacky definition of salvation. That's what the Bible is communicating to us when it talks about salvation. If we're missing any of the elements that existed in Eden, the life the way God intended it to be, or shalom, the wholeness and completeness of life, then we're not experiencing the fullness of salvation. Salvation is the restoration to what things were supposed to be. This is why James says faith without works is dead. And it's the idea is this: if salvation is the wholeness of life, well, God created work for us to do, and that work is supposed to be part of what makes us whole and fulfilled. And if we're not doing that work, we're not experiencing the fullness of salvation. Faith without works is dead. Well, I argue here, this is the same with beauty. God created the physical world. He loves the physical world. He created it. He wants us living in it, and he wants us enjoying pleasure in the physical world, physical pleasure, which is something a lot of Christians get a little wary of. But God wants that physical pleasure for us. And the word chamad is that pleasure for the senses that we're talking about here. And hopefully you remember that's how I'm defining beauty. Chamad, the pleasure for the senses. Pleasure that is deep inside us and can change us deep inside. It's not just a pretty painting with a Bible verse written at the bottom. It's something really that can affect us deep inside. It affects us to our core. And if we don't have that, we're not experiencing the fullness of life. And if we don't have that, therefore, we're not experiencing the fullness of salvation. And so beauty and creating beauty is essential to salvation. It's part of what salvation means. So as artists then, anytime we create beauty, we're giving people even just a tiny glimpse of the full restoration that Jesus is in the process of accomplishing and will return to finish. And it's a really great, an amazing opportunity, really, for artists to participate in what Jesus is doing. So beauty gives us a glimpse of Eden. It gives us a glimpse of the original Eden, what God intended, and the new Eden that Jesus is creating and will usher in here. So I just want to reinforce one last time here. I'm not saying at all that all art should be beautiful. That is the last thing here I'm trying to say. There are times when art needs to disgust us. It needs to shock us. But when we do create beauty, whether it's in the arts or in some other form, we're giving people a glimpse of salvation. So in the next video, I'm going to give a much more tangible, real-life application of this. I'll show you an example of where this gets played out in everyday life.